Hey people, Sylvius here, back on Leaf. This is Leaf, I think 103 at this point, which is another Leaf video where I have not, oh, it was already mounted. I have not actually done my 100th video yet. I have yet to decide what I'm doing. I'm trying to actually, right now, I'm planning on being busy for like the next couple of days. I'm hoping that's it. So I'm trying to get a backlog of videos made up. So like this video, oop, that is uber lag. That is intense lag actually. Boing, boing, boing. Wow. That's intense. I can't even, alright, well, let me do this real quick. Let me kill Tibia and reopen. Okie dokie. We are off to an excellent start. Alright, I'm back in. Yeah, that was a tad bit intense. Alright, well anyway, plan for today is, because I just did 2 videos of questing and I wanted to kind of just do something meh, something nice and easy. I figured I'd come back here, hopefully get my last bass skirt from the Dwarks. That's the game plan. Ideally this will be a shorter video because I think there's only an hour till server save and I want to be well off before then. On that note, switch to my throwing knives for this. Grab some meat from these guys since I'm clearly not regenerating at the moment. Anyway, my topic for discussion this time around is, strangely enough, biology. One of the things I like to do, by the way, just throwing this out there, is I like to like impart knowledge to people. Like talking about like random crap that happens in my life. Nothing wrong with that. All fine and dandy. But occasionally I like to like talk about things that like I find like interesting. So I kind of have like 2 topics on this one. The first is I was reading this. This is like a smaller side note, I guess. I was reading this Straight Dope article, which is that website that I'm a fan of, where people like ask the dude kind of randomish typed questions, and he gives like he researches them and gives back answers. Am I lagging again? Okay. The upside to hunting dorks is even if I do lag out, it's not going to be too deadly. Where is the spot down? Right there, apparently. All right. Let's get this open first. Yo, all this crap with like trying to break open the fences and stuff like that is a pointless waste of time. Just want to point that out too. Yeah, it's cool that even if I get kicked here, there's basically no real consequence. So that makes hunting these dudes nice. The only thing that can really you suck. The only thing that can really hurt me is the venom dudes, and even then, it's kind of debatable. You also died on top of a body, and you're invisible. Wasn't actually paying any attention, so I don't even know if I got any. Dead. I don't even know if I managed to get any bass skirts. Pretty sure there's another one around here. At least I thought there was. But I guess not? Alright, I'm not going to bother with 1 gold. Or 2. 23 though? Sure. Which, did I even pick up the 23? I did not, because I am at least somewhat lagging at this point. Anyway, so the dude asked some kind of question about, like, basically his question was, like, can bacteria make you fat? And he referenced this, I guess, like, article that he had read somewhere where this lady had received a a fecal matter transplant, which is apparently a thing. This is probably one of the weirder conversations I've had in one of my videos, huh? So, I mean, I guess everybody probably should know at least that your insides are just a haven for various bacteria that you have like a symbiotic relationship with. Hope you guys know that at least. You should. Occasionally, though, all that stuff gets like out of whack because, I don't know, you ate bleach or something. Something really weird happens to your insides, and the balance of the bacteria can get all out of whack. So one of the things you can do is you can get a transplant of poop from a healthy donor who has a like healthy and correct combo of microorganisms in their stomach and intestines, and then you can share them by way of poop transplant. This is definitely one of the weirder things I've spoken about, I gotta say. Definitely one of the stranger ones. But yeah, anyway, so this lady got one. I think it was from her mom, which I feel like is even weirder, to be honest. Like, I don't know. Like, if I have to get somebody else's poop stuck in me, and I'm not really sure how this works, because the words fecal matter transplant are never getting typed into my search bar. Sorry. But presumably, like, when you get blood from a person, it's called a transfusion, not a transplant. A transplant implies, like, a surgical procedure. So I'm not exactly sure how this works, but, like, I assume it's a surgery, I guess? Regardless, though, if somebody else's poop is getting implanted into my body, I feel like I would prefer it to be a stranger and not a person that I meet, like, on a day-to-day basis. You know, like, I don't know how weird it would be to be, like... I mean, I think this was, like, an adult woman, so, I mean, she probably didn't live with her mom any longer, but, like... Still, to, like, be at the family dinners on, like, a holiday, you're like, oh, happy Thanksgiving, everybody! How's that poop I gave you been treating you? It's just not something I think I could handle in my life. Like, I feel like that's probably one of those situations where if I had to, like... if I had to routinely meet a family member who I had a poop transplant with, I'd probably either just die, like I just accept death as a happy alternative to that situation, or I'll just never be able to interact with my family again. It's just not something I can do. Did I already do the desert quest? He needs a knight, druid, and a sorcerer. Alright, well, he's got the one position that I'm good on, so... But anyway, so she got this, and for whatever reason, and I don't know exactly what reason she was getting the transplant in the first place, but for whatever reason, it also caused, like, some kind of specific bacteria colony in her insides to go nuts. And then she gained, like, a massive amount of weight really quickly for some reason. Which is apparently a thing that can happen. So the article kind of, like, went into depth, basically, and I'm kind of, like, paraphrasing here at the moment, but basically the way this works is there's, like, two family of bacteria that live inside of you, which had, like, fancy Latin names that, you know, I'm not even going to try to pronounce, nor even if I remember them. And I don't. I think one started with an F and the other one started with a B, but I'm really not sure. So we're just going to call them A and B. So you have, like, a balance, for the most part, like, where the great majority of the bacteria that are inside of you and other microorganisms are from one of these two families. And they did a whole bunch of, like, sciencey stuff and were able to determine, like, certain people are more likely to have, like, this particular problem if they have more of this one. And, like, one of them corresponds more to, like, obesity. The interesting thing was, though, that they did an experiment on mice where they took mice and stuck them in, like, I'm drawing a blank on the word right now, but it's God, dude, I hate when I forget words. It drives me nuts. Basically, it's a like completely sealed environment. There's a you suck. Yeah, if I hadn't got paralyzed, I would have been able to hit that. I was trying to hit him with a her, I guess. I was trying to hit her with a ethereal spear, and because of the paralyze, I couldn't make the step in time. There we go. Would have been nice if that one had a skirt. So anyway, though, these mice like were born in this completely germ-free environment, 100% germ-free. So their like intestinal tracts had no bacteria whatsoever. So the whole like digestion process for these mice was based just purely off of what their own like bodies could do. And it was like fascinating because they discovered that to maintain their like current body weight, the mice had to eat 30% more calories a day than the like control mice. So you had the same mouse, and the goal was to just get it to not shrink or not enlarge itself. And the ones that had no bacteria inside of their stomachs required 30% more food daily to just like not starve to death, essentially. So I mean, like that part wasn't super great because you don't really want. I think you don't necessarily want a situation where food consumption increases 30%. Also, to be honest with you, like I have to say, like, you know, I enjoy eating tasty food, and if I was able to eat 30% more food without getting fat, I would almost certainly eat 60% more food and just continue to get fat. So, I mean, you know, but that's because, like, I'm a crappy person. But yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And then the other thing was that even when they intentionally fed the mice, like, a high-calorie, high-fat diet, like with high carbs and stuff like that, they still couldn't even make the mice fat. Basically, the time that the food spent in the mouse's intestines was like, there was an upper limit, obviously. Like, the mouse doesn't have any control over how long food stays in its system for, essentially. And in that time, a piece of food could just not generate enough, could just not stay there long enough for the mouse to get fat. So even when they were basically just feeding the mouse, like, ground-up carbs with fat mixed into it, it just wasn't staying in its system long enough for it to be fat. Which I thought was pretty fascinating. But yeah, they also found some other problems, like the one bacteria colony has like a heightened chance of you getting like diabetes or heart failure and things like that. So yeah, still some research for the future, but it was interesting. I thought it would be awesome if one of these dudes would turn invisible. Boom. Next. Maybe. Maybe. There we go. I'm not gonna let you go invisible again so that I have to stand here for another freaking 5 hours. So that was the one topic. And then the other topic was, I feel like you guys probably have heard this term before. It's called the like 10,000 hour rule, which basically it says to be an expert you have to practice, and it's roughly 10,000 hours of practice you have to do to become an expert in whatever it is you want. So you want to be a chess grand champion or a pro League of Legends player or whatever, you need to play it for 10,000 hours. Alright, real quick after I kill this one, because I'm going off on a minor tangent before I continue this actual story. Oh, hey, look at that, I'm out of, whatchamacallit? I was out of throwing knives. Gotta switch to these crappy spears now. Alright, yeah, we'll kill you with a thing. Alright, real quick. I want to see how many hours are in a year, because, I mean, while I could do that math, I don't really care. In a year. So there are 8,760 hours in a year, okay? I'm going to take that, and we're going to... Alright, so waking hours would be 5,840. Granted, you couldn't play League of Legends non-stop for all of your waking hours for a year. I think, like, you know, you'd probably be sick every now and then. Hey, look, there's a dude standing next to me. You'd probably be sick every now and then. You probably need to go to the bathroom, and I mean, I guess, like, theoretically you could play League of Legends just on a toilet all the time, but I think we need to talk about quality of life here for a little while. So let's say, hold on, I'm gonna go back to that real quick. All right, let's go back to this initial number. All right, let's say, how many hours do you think you could devote towards League of Legends in a day for an extended period of time? I'm thinking you could probably devote, let's say, 14 hours a day. That gives you 2 hours of eating, sleeping, and, you know, like, getting ready for your, yeah. That gives you 2 hours for sleeping, not sleeping. Eating, going to the bathroom, like, getting ready for bed, showering, and stuff like that. You know what, heck, let's go with, like, 3 hours for that. In which case, you could play League of Legends for 13 hours a day. So, 13 times 365... That's 4,745 hours a year, which I feel like is still pretty questionable. But that's if you were going to be like, I'm going to do nothing but play League of Legends nonstop forever. That also doesn't include downtime or maintenance time or any time that you, like, lose power and can't play. Nor, like as mentioned, does it include sick time. But hey, let's, you know... I think, though, a more reasonable answer would be you could probably play League of Legends for 8 hours a day. Because at the current number I'm sitting at, it would take you more than 2 years of nonstop play. Let's say you played 8 hours a day at 365. That's 2,920 hours. So that would take you almost 3 years of 8-hour days of League of Legends. No days off. No holidays, nothing. I mention this because I think League of Legends is only on its 7th season now. I find it somewhat unlikely that anybody who's, like, a pro player at the moment has actually put forth 10,000 hours to become an expert. Which is an interesting concept, because then that means that, like, the top tier players right now are likely not actually the best they could possibly be. Like, they'll continue to get better, which I find an interesting concept. You kind of, like, you look at some of the pro players in League of Legends right now, and you think to yourself, like, God, this guy's, like, the peak of League of Legends. And, like, yeah, some dude might come around and be better than him, because that's how it always is in, like, any kind of competitive environment. There's always a dude that has just more natural talent and stuff like that. And that's kind of just how life is. But it's interesting to note that the people that are playing today aren't actually at their peaks. But anyway, so I was reading this article. There is that 10,000 hour rule. But it was kind of, the article was saying that they've been doing some studies that have been disputing the 10,000 hour rule. Not the actual 10,000 hours aspect of it. Just that repeated practice isn't always necessarily the most effective way to get better at things. One of the things they were saying, though, see, and I kind of, like, I think you do have natural talent for things. Obviously, with certain things, like, as I use League of Legends as an example, there is a physical aspect to League of Legends, which is, you know, your hand-eye coordination, sort of, and your reflexes. And while you can train your reflexes, some people like just naturally have better reflexes. I don't believe that every human being has the same like starting point of reflexes and then a same like maximum tolerance for reflexes or something, upper value, if you will. And I know there's like a concept of like diminishing returns where like you keep doing like weightlifting, and when you first started maybe like a 20-pound weight was sufficient. Well, I guess that's a terrible example. If you're doing like single ones in your hands, maybe like a 5-pound weight is sufficient. But after you bulk up a whole bunch, 5 pounds isn't doing it anymore. So if you keep just trying to like do arm exercises with just the 5-pounder, you're going to get less and less value out of it, and you need to either do it more or get a heavier one. So there's always that concept of diminishing returns, like so. But yeah, I like don't have any of my iced tea left anymore. I had all those bottles of Snapple and they're all gone. Yeah, I hate using spears, by the way. The slow or the low range is just such a hassle, and also the bad accuracy. Alright, get these voodoo dudes. Alright, that's one voodoo dude that's dead now. Oh man, you went invis. Oh man, I'm paralyzed and drunk, which is making this even worse. But yeah, so like, there's always going to be like a concept of natural talent. But like, I don't think... Well, I mean, I don't know, maybe. I was going to say, like, I don't think with like 10,000 hours of practice would I ever be a pro soccer player. Like, it's just not in me. However... Well, okay, so like specifically, I was going to say, like, I'm not really in shape. So, I mean, like, what I was kind of... Tribal Mask, it's close. What I was trying, like, an analogy I would make is, like, a car racing event. Whereas, 10,000 hours of, like, practicing racing wouldn't allow me to win a race if my starting car was just a piece of crap. So, like, a sport, like soccer, for instance, would be a, like, physical, game. Even if I had practiced soccer for 10,000 hours, I'd still be bad at soccer because, like, physically my body's crap. But assuming that I, like, maintain the body of a pro athlete, I personally would still not be a good soccer player because I have asthma, which would, like, drastically limit what I could ever really hope to accomplish with a sport. So, like... Yeah, actually, my, like, basic ability to, like, I just have a body that's not capable of playing soccer at pro level, essentially. But yeah, anyway, this article had kind of mentioned that, or this article had gone into the fact that genetics actually play a part into how effective you'll be. In fact, more so than the 10,000 hour thing. And here's the thing that, like, it didn't surprise me to learn this, although they went on the genetics end of things more so than I think I would have. Everybody knows, like, Sebastian Bach, the, like, composer. I think he's a composer, right? He's the most famous one in his family, but there were, like, 14 other, like, expert musicians in his family. So it's kind of like this question of, like, is his family just, like, genetically disposed to being amazing musicians? I would have assumed, though, that, like, the odds of anybody in my family, like, let's say I get married and I have 5 kids, and each of my 5 kids get married and have 5 kids. The odds of any one of us becoming, like, a world-class musician are low, because the odds of us any one of us becoming a musician in the first place is low. Whereas, like, you know, in like take a military family, for instance, like a lot of people that grow up in military families also join the military. You know, a lot of people that are like doctors or lawyers also go into the same fields because it's what they grew up around. Their family kind of is like promoting it to an extent. They're surrounded by people that like know what they're talking about. Like, obviously, a lot of people like buck that trend and are like, nah, I don't want to do the family thing. So I would assume like the Bach family were all like, oh look, Lady Bach had another child. I can't wait to see what kind of musical genius he becomes. And then, you know, he's surrounded by musical experts. He has the expectations of being a great musician, and he tries to fulfill those. I feel like if you had taken like all the Bachs and just thrown them into orphanages, necessarily not all of them would have become, you know, at least not like the 16 of them or whatever would have became famous. On the other hand, though, they did some like research. Let's see, how big is this one? All right, we can drop down on this one. They did some research using twins. So they had fraternal and identical twins, like, go out for this, and they had them like answer various questionnaires and stuff like that, and then they had them try to like sketch portraits. And what they found was that the identical twins drew pictures with roughly the same quality. So whether or not they were good or they were bad, both of the identical twins were pretty much like their drawing skills were also very close to identical. Whereas the fraternal twins, and here's the trigger, or the kicker, is identical twins, their DNA is identical. They're 100% identical. Like, I take a DNA swab from the two of them and I can't tell which one it came from. Fraternal twins are only 50% identical. The fraternal twins, even though they grew up together, even though they were in the same environment and they were, you know, whatever, they didn't show the same level of similarity that the identical twins did. Which indicates there's a like genetic aspect to how skilled you are in a thing. So basically, you're either born being amazing and talented, or you're screwed, and welcome to your life of mediocrity, friend. It's like things like that is sort of soul-crushing. Because, like, while I definitely am not excelling in anything that I'm particularly doing at the moment... Well, you know, actually, okay, so at first, I guess I still view myself, I guess, like, I'm not exactly young any longer, but I still kind of view myself as young a lot of times. So, like, when people talk about, like, your potential, they're like, your potential's unlimited, you can do whatever you want, and, like, you know, kind of in reality, you can't. But this kind of, like, research, like, clearly nail in that coffin, like, nope. You're either innately talented at your thing that you want to be, or you're just not doing it. I mean, like, yeah, you could probably overcome that hurdle to a certain extent with, like, hard work. Like, let's say I desperately wanted to be, like, a baseball player or something like that, and I don't have the natural disposition to be a baseball player. By training massively, I could still probably become, like, a minor league pro player or something like that. But I'll never be, like, you know, I'll never be, like, a Babe Ruth or a Barry Bonds or, God, I cannot think of any other famous baseball players. Chase Utley, I think. But I don't really know if he's famous or if he's just the name that I hear a lot. But yeah, like, you'll just, unless you're innately talented, you're just never going to become, like, the next superstar in your field. Which is, like, depressing at first, but then I think about it a little bit more, and I'm like, well, at the very least, it gives me an excuse for why I suck. Like, I just wasn't innately talented. It's not like I'm just a loser that didn't try hard or just, like, squandered all of my opportunities. I'm just not innately talented. It's not my fault. Which is kind of not a refreshing thought, but is a relieving thought. It's like, yeah, whew, I don't suck as much, or at least it's not my fault that I suck. But there's also some other interesting things too. Is that they I think everybody knows that children are more capable of picking up languages, which is why if you want to train. That's not exactly the word I was looking for, but yeah, if you want to teach your kids another language, you should do it while they're still kids. The neurons and brain connections that are in place when you're a child that make it easy to learn languages aren't there any longer when you're an adult, and it requires much more effort and work to learn another language when you're an adult. Well, what they kind of also discovered too is that one of the major things in whether or not you can reach a high level of aptitude in your field is when you started. Obviously, if I start trying to become a chess grandmaster today, and somebody tried to be a chess grandmaster, 20 years ago when they were 8, 20 years from now, when they've had 40 years and I've only had 20 years, they'll obviously be the better chess grandmaster. However, 20 years, if they started 20 years ago and we take a screenshot of them right now, and then I practice for 20 years, and we take a screenshot of me 20 years later and compare these two screenshots, unless I was more innately talented than that other person, he'll or she will be a superior whatever, in this case chess grandmaster, just because they started while they were younger. So there's some interesting stuff, I have to say. See, I always like learning about that stuff. But anyway, the other thing I found interesting, though, was just in general the research on twins. And now here's where this conversation is going to get a little bit dark. During World War II, the Nazis did a whole bunch of incredibly inhumane research and stuff like that, and a lot of it was done on twins. Some of it was nonsense, trying to see if if they put the two twins in separate rooms and then cut off one of their hands, would the other one feel it, kind of stuff. But there's always that debate in in psychology, but also in child raising and stuff like that, the nature versus nurture kind of thing, how it comes down to it. And I'm going to break now into a slightly political conversation. When a lot of people talk about being gay, a lot of people are gay people choose to be gay, and other people are gay people are born gay. If I had to pick one, I would say that gay people are born gay, but that's only if I was forced to pick one. I'm going to real quick switch topics and do a little thought experiment. All right, let's say I say to you, and listen closely, what is your favorite fruit, bananas or apples? See, now you'll say one, you'll either go bananas or apples, but if you actually understood the question I asked you what your favorite fruit is. I didn't say pick one of these two options I'm giving you. I said, what is your favorite fruit? It might be grapes, it might be cherries, it might be strawberries, it might be blueberries, it might be oranges, bananas, apples, tangerines, clementines, nectarines, plums, pears, who knows? But that was the question I asked you. What is your favorite fruit? When people say that thing about gay people over whether or not they're born or they choose that way, it's actually a salesman technique too. Salesmen will say things we have two options, the blue or the red, which card you like. And by giving you those two options, the blue and the red, they're trying to draw your attention away from the fact that another option is neither. You could leave and not buy anything. So yeah, by saying some of you, when I had said that, what is your favorite fruit, some of you answered as with one of those two options, even though you might actually prefer, strawberries or something like that. Personally, I love cherries. I think cherries are my favorite fruit. God, I love cherries. Grapes are pretty good too, though. Raspberries too, now that I think about it. But yeah, so that question of is it do you choose to be gay or are you born gay? I think it misses the actual point, which is that it's neither. It's a learned thing. I would venture that with anything involving like complex human behavior and stuff like that, that there is probably a little bit of both of those mixed in. Like, there are probably some people that are like, you know what? I'm going to be gay from now on. Just seems like a good choice for me to make. So there are probably people that actually just say one day to themselves, for whatever reason, I'm going to be gay. I would imagine probably that there's various like genetic things that go into that decision, just like there's genetic things that go into every, not decision, but into that like situation. So I would imagine that there are probably some people that are like genetically predisposed to being gay. I would also imagine that some kind of like hormone imbalances and things like that could cause a person to be gay. I'm not saying that everybody who's gay has a hormone imbalance. I'm just saying that like if I'm a guy and I have some kind of like tumor that causes me to not produce any kind of testosterone and to instead get like, 5 times as much estrogen as a normal woman does, then yeah, probably something weird will happen. What that something weird is, who knows? But I think generally speaking, though, it's not like, for the vast majority of people, it's not a like, oh, I was born gay, or a, oh, I chose to be gay. It's a, the various experiences that I've encountered throughout my life have led me to have this outlook on life, and part of that is that I'm gay. Is how I personally feel like it works. I feel like people are probably getting angry at me right now. Some people are probably going like, no, that's not true. You have no say and you'd always be gay, and other people are probably freaking out because I said the word gay in my video in the first place, but whatever. See, the way I think of it is like, let's say I could like go back in time, right? So like I take a gay guy and then I go back in time and abduct him as a baby and stick him in an entirely different environment. I don't think he'd be gay. He might be still. I mean, it comes down to his like predisposition and stuff like that to it, which like his genetic one. But I feel like, like for example, you might have a person who grew up in like an incredibly like manly man family, but he himself wasn't a manly man. Like didn't enjoy football, didn't enjoy all the dudes like getting together, drinking beer, and like laughing at stuff while on like trucks and stuff. Maybe he was like a more intellectual type person. He was like, yeah, I just want to like sit here and read and stuff like that. I'm not intentionally describing myself, by the way. I just realized that I kind of am, though. But you have this person who's like, yeah, I'm not interested in all that manly man stuff. And then, like, he either then, in an effort to like find whatever it is that he likes, becomes more like feminine himself and then ends up being gay as a possibility. Or, maybe in his like effort to idolize that masculinity thing, he ends up being attracted to highly masculine men. I don't know. But I feel like if you could like, or you could get like a clone of a person and then just raise them in an entirely different environment. Like, if we like take a hypothetical guy, right? His parents are wealthy, like upper middle class. He's really interested in art. He's kind of a feminine person, and he's gay. And then, I go back in time, or I get a clone of him, and I just drop him off in the middle of the Middle East. So instead of growing up with like, self-expression and, like talking about his feelings and stuff like that, he grows up with like, a strict religious culture and fear of death every day. I feel like he probably won't necessarily become gay. I'm not trying to make some kind of statement either about like gay people are like weak or something like that, or more emotional or anything like that. I'm just saying like that's a like personality state. Like, for instance, like using myself as an example here, actually. I chose to make this video game video right now and to like sit down and play Tibia. And you could say that like a series of my decisions have led to the fact that like, you know, I'm sort of a failure as a human being. Yeah. But no, like you could, like the fact that I'm like a generally kind of like somewhat lazy person with like a bad work ethic. Yeah, like a series of decisions have led to that. But generally speaking, like that's my learned behavior, and that's what I developed as through like my childhood, as you know, I grew and developed my own personality. Like that's the kind of person I became. I wasn't born lazy. I didn't sit down to myself at one day and just be like, yeah, you know what? I should just screw it. I should just be super, super lazy. Individually, I choose to do lazy things. Like, I have deadlines and things that I'm supposed to do, and I'll just be like, I'm just not doing that. I choose to do that individually. But, like, I never sat down and said to myself, man, I should just, like, not try hard. That would be great. That's just how I developed. I didn't, like, you know, when I was a kid looking for a hobby, I wasn't like, man, I should just choose video games. Video games are just the thing that I kind of stumbled upon and liked. And, you know, like, I had a stepbrother and a stepsister, and neither one of them are as into video games as I was, even though we were in the same environment with the same access to the video games. Because we had different experiences, and I had different experiences before my mom got married, and I acquired a stepbrother and a stepsister. Wow, we're not having any luck with these skirts, again. How am I doing? And I'm running low on arrows, too. So yeah, like, I didn't choose that, and I wasn't born with a predisposition for video games, or for enjoying reading, or, like, anime, or something like that. That's just, like, learned behavior. Even if you take it, like, go back to something less specific as that, like, just generally being, like, nerdy and geeky, or things like that. I don't think anybody's born with a like disposition for liking geeky and nerdy hobbies, nor do they like sit there and just, you know, like choose like it's a like vocation or something in a video game. Like, oh man, should I be like a sorcerer or a druid? Should I be like a sports fanatic or a nerd? It's just the way you develop as like a learned behavior. By the way, that kind of goes back to that twin thing, is I feel like if I was like a mad scientist or something in like a cartoon, there would be so much fun research, like psychological research you could do with twins. Identical twins, obviously. Like just so many things I'd like to see, like that thing I said, like if a person grew up an entirely different way, I could actually test that. I could take twins and put them into two completely different situations, and then see how they end up developing. You know, if twin A grows up in, like, a family of athletes and that, like, own a gym, and twin B grows up neglected in an orphanage, will they both have the same hobbies? I feel like they probably won't. You know, if one of them has, like, supportive parents, and then the other one grows up with parents that like are like, all right, little Timmy, we're going to go to Walmart to steal our food for the week. Now make sure you don't say anything, and always hide the sandwiches in your pants or something. Like, I feel like they would grow up entirely differently. And the Nazis did a whole bunch of that research, which like sounds to me to be incredibly interesting. Fortunately, the Nazis tainted said research by being, like, you know, evil, and also, like, sort of racist and anti-Semitic, so that, like, taints their results, which is a shame, I suppose. Well, I mean, it's a shame that research ever took place in the way that it took place. Like, don't get me wrong, that's terrible that it ever happened, but it is unfortunate that nobody can really, like, reference that research or, like, talk about it because it's, you know, awful. And while it's like interesting and valuable, probably, although the value of it is debatable, because like I said, the like the scientists' own like bias in the form of like being racist and disliking Jews tainted the research results. So like when you're trying to determine who's more intelligent, and you're just like, well, I inherently hate that person, your results are no longer unbiased. So yeah, it is regrettable that the people that died to like make that research exist, the research is still not very useful in the scientific community, both because again it's like it's tainted, and then also because like it's evil. So nobody really like works with that stuff, and follow-up research can't be done. Like the stuff with like would the twins feel each other's pain and stuff like that. There will never be a follow-up result of that. Like there has been studies just where they had like one twin keep their hand in like cold water to see if the other twin would feel it. But like in a theoretical aspect, the twin who's got his hand in the cold water knows that he or she is not actually in danger. It's just a minor discomfort. Whereas the twin who's having its hand cut off by a psychopathic Nazi is in mortal danger and actually in extreme pain. So presumably whatever telepathic transfer of feeling and emotion, because you always hear that thing, like people say like, oh, my twin was like in a car accident and like I just had this bad feeling, and then the call comes in. You hear those things all the time. Well, the car accident was like actual mortal danger that the other twin went through. Sticking your hand in cold water is not mortal danger. Getting experimented on by a Nazi, that's mortal danger though. They also did, this had nothing to do with the Nazis, but there was sometimes people say they have like a sixth sense where they can feel like people looking at them. So they did a study where they had a person like sit in a room with one of those like one-way mirror kind of things, and they had to like mark down when they thought people were like watching them. And some of the people would have people like always watching them. Some of them had people that would occasionally come and watch them, and then others had nobody watching them. It was kind of that same issue where I usually feel like when people are like, oh, I had that weird sixth sense where somebody was watching me. Usually there's like intent behind it. Like you can tell when you're talking to a person if they don't like you sometimes. Like you can tell by the tone and their mannerisms and their body language. You can kind of just be like, yeah, this guy's not liking me. But if a person just like repeats the words like as it's a script without knowing what they're trying to convey. Like if you've never seen a script, by the way, for like a play or a movie or something like that, in addition to the lines, they'll usually be like in parentheses or something, a like say it with this tone, or like look menacingly and kind of stuff like that, because you need those additional cues. The actor needs those like additional cues to make the scene correctly. And if the actor just like says the words like, oh yeah, sure, I can give you $50, is a lot different from, oh yeah, sure, I can give you $50, or a like, yeah, sure, I can give you $50. Like there's a bunch of different ways you can say it, kind of thing. So I do kind of believe that like the intent behind what you're saying does in fact like play a role. So if you just have a dude who's like, all right, stare at this guy. Just stare at this guy. Ooh, I don't want to walk through that. Oh, I walked through that. But yeah, if you just have a dude that like stares at some guy while he's on the other side of a mirror for no reason, I don't think he would necessarily pick up. First of all, I don't really believe that in the first place. Like the whole like sixth sense thing, I don't really buy. I likewise don't buy that there's any kind of like telepathic connection between twins. I don't necessarily discount it, but it doesn't really make sense to me, so I'm not buying it. But I think like if you really wanted to truly test whether or not that was how that worked, you would need to go, a step beyond having a person just stare at them or keeping the one twin have their hand in a cup of water or whatever. you need to put that other twin in mortal danger. Like, throw him into a burning building and then see if the other twin has some emotions. You could do that with him, like, you know, like, trick the one twin into thinking he's in mortal danger. Like, throw him in a, I don't know. Like, you could put him in a plane or something and then trick him into thinking that the plane's crashing. There's a decent amount of time where that plane can be plummeting to the earth from high up before it picks up its nose and doesn't crash. You could test it that way, for instance. I feel like that would be a little inhumane, but you could do it. Likewise, I'm not sure exactly how you would test the Sixth Sense one, because the intent is, or the idea is that there needs to be intent to harm the person being observed. So I'm not exactly sure how you would mimic intent. But I'm sure it could be done in some way, shape, or form. Anyway, folks, that is it for me on this one. It ended up being a little bit longer than I wanted. Closer to 50 minutes, because I suck. Anyway, as always, people, like, favorite, comment, subscribe, check me out on Patreon, Twitter, and I'll see you guys later.